right, good evening. It's 7:03, and we are calling the meeting to order. And I would like to ask Mr. Curtis Leonard to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome to tonight's board meeting. This is the meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of the board meetings tonight is for the board to conduct its business in public. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. It is a time for listening for understanding. So those wishing to comment must complete a comment card and give it to the board secretary before the meeting begins, or no later than agenda item 3.0 during presentations. Abusive public comments personally directed towards staff members will not be tolerated. Please refrain from using individual names of current or former employees. When it is your turn to address the board, please state your name at the start of the testimony. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You will hear a timer when 3 minutes are up. And visitors who have completed a comment card indicating a desire to speak to an agenda item will be called at that portion of the agenda. Per board procedure, written materials to provide board members with background information should be submitted to the superintendent's office at least 1 week in advance of the meeting. With that said, Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Howley, agenda item 3.01, Fiscal Recovery Task Force Application Extension, and the consent agenda item 5.04, minutes of the December 11th, 2018 special meeting and executive session have been added to the agenda. Additionally, the school discipline report has been removed due to a technical error in the graphing and program data. So this information will be provided, however, at a future meeting. Course name changes have also been updated in agenda item 5.05, High School Instructional Council, new courses.
All right. So I would like to ask a board member to make a motion, please, to approve the agenda review.
I move that we add the items Dr. Watts said to tonight's agenda and the changes therein.
All right. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
All right. A motion has been made to make changes to the agenda review items. Are there any discussions or questions? Hearing none, I'd like to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right. Motion passes. We are moving on to 2.01. Let's see, one moment. Okay. We do have an item here for 1.06, but we're asking our public to speak during communications, if not during the actual agenda item. 1.06 is a protocol. So moving on to 2.0 recognition, School of Distinction. So the board is recognizing Millennium Elementary tonight, and we have recognized them for the School of Distinction at the Puget Sound ESD meeting, but tonight for their outstanding student achievement, receiving the 2018 School of Distinction Award, and Millennium also won this award in 2017. So we would like to invite Millennium Principal Tracy Watson, staff, and parents to come to the front and be recognized and say a few words, if you would, please.
Good evening, members of the board, President Vengadaslam, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Howley. I'd like to thank you for placing me at such a great school. I would love to claim credit for all the great work that's been done, but really it has been the staff that's been there, and we're going to continue that work. But I'm very, very excited to be there, and we're very excited to get this award. So thank you for your support.
speaking. Don't even think I'm speaking.
I feel very fortunate. I'm a third grade teacher at Millennium, and I feel very fortunate. This is my 14th year there, to be supported by the administration, by support staff, and the para-educators and the parents, and the students are wonderful there. It's a wonderful place to be teaching at, and great students to be working with.
No, I'm not going up there. No, I have a fear of talking in front of people.
It's all right. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to ask you to stay for photos after the proclamations tonight, okay? And being a trailblazer mom, I'm equally proud and also proud of our former principal, Carla James. So thank you. We are now at 2.02 proclamations, and it is Guest Employee Appreciation Month. So I'd like to ask Director DeBruler to read the proclamation, please.
Yes, this is Guest Employee Appreciation Month. Whereas guest employees serve throughout all buildings within the Kent School District, effectively embedding themselves into the cultures of an array of environments. And whereas the dedication of guest employees enables teaching staff to engage in professional development to enhance their teaching skills and abilities. And whereas guest employees provide coverage for employees to address situations that arise in life. And whereas the service of guest employees positively contributes to the mission of the organization to successfully prepare all students for their futures, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims the month of December as Guest Employee Appreciation Month to recognize the contributions of guest employees and urges all citizens to join in this observance. And I don't
All right.
have any guest teachers of it here.
Guest employees, please stand.
All right. Yes?
Oh, please.
Do any of you want to say a word?
Actually, just I want to say something. Hi, everyone. I'm working. This is my first year working as a guest teacher in Kent School District. Actually, I started my work here as a para. I came from Iraq. I was teacher for a while. Then there, I have bachelor degree in English language teaching. Reporter for 20 years there. Actually, it's a very great thing I saw here. I was working with very great people like sub-office and Jackie and Kathy. And I met a wonderful guy there. He's Mr. Martin there. Actually, I faced a lot of difficulties. That's very important to someday I think now time is not allowing us to talk about this, but a lot of things should be discussed about kids in the schools, about different staffs. I can't say it now. But it's a big challenge to me to face, and I'm deciding, I have a determination to go ahead, and my goal to be permanent teacher here in Kent District. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You get to accept it on behalf of everybody.
That's great. Thank
you.
Thank you for your service.
So please do stay for the photographs.
Yes.
Thank you.
This one. Okay.
All right. We are up to Inclusive Schools Week, and I'd like to ask Director Hardy to please read the proclamation.
Yes, whereas Inclusive Schools Week is an annual event sponsored by the Inclusive Schools Network to celebrate the progress schools have made in providing supportive and quality education to all students, including those who are marginalized due to disability, gender, ethnicity, geography, and language. And whereas the Kent School District is committed to providing an education in schools and classrooms that is welcoming and capable of educating all students. And whereas the educators of the Kent School District recognize that each child is unique, learns differently, and therefore learns better if teaching is tailored to their abilities and interests. And whereas Inclusive Schools Week provides an opportunity for educators, students, and families to ensure that schools continue to improve their ability to successfully educate all children. And whereas by their efforts to make our schools and classrooms high-performing and inclusive, the educators and families of the Kent School District have contributed significantly to building a stronger and more inclusive school community. Whereas this year, the theme for Inclusive Schools Week is Kaleidoscope of Friends, which describes how education takes on an infinite array of patterns of brilliant light created by repeated reflection, beautiful shapes where all children belong and are valued as contributing members of the school community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims December 3rd through the 7th, 2018 as Inclusive Schools Week in the Kent School District and urges all citizens to join in this observance.
All right. We'd like, if there are any members in the audience who'd like to support inclusive education, to accept the proclamation. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
So I certainly want to accept this proclamation on behalf of our learning supports team, which supports our inclusive education staff. We really want to recognize and honor the work of our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our administrators, in addition to our parents that consistently and passionately advocate for our students every day. Thank you.
This time, we'd like to take some photographs of the schools of distinction, Millennium family and educators, and then followed by our guest employees and inclusive schools. Before I go to the next. All right, we are up to our 3.0 presentations, our Fiscal Recovery Task Force Application Extension. Unfortunately, Jennifer, help me pronounce last name, Harja Hassan, is unable to be here tonight. She was reviewing the information with Steve Clem, and we had a meeting to talk about that, and I'll ask Vice President Strauss to kind of go over it since she's unable to be here tonight.
Thank you. So the board did meet last night. As you know, we're working on establishing a task force, and we had asked for applications, and as Maya mentioned, Jennifer and Steve have been helping us in reviewing those applications. So last night we did meet with them and went over the applications that they had, and we still have some holes, openings. We don't have all of the staff that we were hoping to have, as well as student voice we're missing. And so in talking, and the other thing that we noticed is it seemed like we were missing some and reaching out to some of our diverse communities. And so the board, in consultation with Jennifer and Steve, have decided that we are going to reopen up our application process to see if we can get some additional voices from students and staff members. And so we will have, it will be open January 2nd through the 16th. We'll be sending out information again, requesting information and people to participate in that task force, with the goal then of being able to announce the names of that task force on our January, is it 23rd, I think, or 22nd, whatever that Wednesday is, and that we'll be announcing who the members of those task force. So we're definitely moving ahead, but we also wanted to make sure that we had all the voices that we need. So I guess I'm also asking if you know students that may have an interest in participating in this. One of the things that we had talked a little bit about last night, but I don't think we made a decision. We were wondering if the 2 years for students was too big of a commitment to ask our students to do, and the thinking that maybe a 1 year may be more appropriate for that. But I think we would have to make that determination here if we were going to change that process to have it be 1 year instead of 2 years. So.
And I think somewhere in the application, we make it, we say it's not applicable. Maybe it's just the.
We said that for the financial,
Yeah,
but I don't think we
financial
had
part.
said. But I think the board would be open to 1 year for students who wanted to serve for 1 year on that. So we will be working with our communications team to make sure that that's out, but please know that we'll be opening that process back up again to get more applications in, and then we'll give another update in January of how that's going.
Right, thank you. Right, we are now up to our 3.02 Safety Services Quarterly Report. I'd like to call on Chief Operations Officer and Academic Support Officer Israel Vela and School Safety Officer Supervisor Tim Kovich to present and answer questions.
Thank you,
Sorry,
members.
I don't have another name.
No worries. Members of the board, President Bangadosala, Superintendent Watts, and Ms. Howley, thank you again for the opportunity. As you recall, we moved to quarterly reports, and I'm excited about some of the highlights that Mr. Kovich will be sharing. I also could not remember if we formally introduced Officer Andy Grove, and so I wanted to welcome Andy again. If I've done that, I apologize, but so great to have him on board with us as well. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Kovich.
Excuse me. Thank you. Again, as Mr. Vela mentioned, we are in quarterly reports, and so this starts back in September, coming out of the summer. So I wanted to touch base on some of the things that led up to the start of the school year. We had 2 safety officers that left us to become teachers in the Kent School District, which was great, both from Kent Meridian High School. So we had 2 new officers that we are recognizing over there. One was a move from another location. One is brand new. Ron Howell came to us from another district, and then we also moved one of our iGrad officers to another location and brought in a new officer, Aaron Beckel. Additionally, we had one of our contracts with the City of Kent for SRO that needed to be filled, and we brought in a new SRO there to fill that contract, Kevin Strong. So we wanted to welcome kind of everybody coming in off the summer. So a lot of planning went into getting into the start of the school year. We did a large emphasis in traffic as we move forward into the new Covington Elementary, working with Chief McCurdy out in Covington. He did a fantastic job bringing on added resources there to understand that walking plan, help design some of that, that safety issue piece there. We also continued with ongoing enhancements to our to our access control, along with camera systems, and Covington Elementary was part of that with the addition of 38 security cameras there. And Eric Maurer, our specialist in our department, is involved in the access control there, and he's doing a great job. Continue with our student mentoring projects as we move in, and then we hit the ground running with our drill compliance, doing lockdown drill compliance, along with everyone recognized state earthquake drill as we moved into October. So great job out there to all the schools. That's a big, big deal to have all the schools recognize that, rain or shine. So great job. Some additional emergency planning that we also did, including Kent Police Department, is to go out to Tahoma School District. Annually, they have been doing a very large disaster drill, an active threat drill with multiple agencies, including police, fire departments, over 40 emergency response personnel just on the EMS and fire side alone take part in that. They land Guardian 1 helicopter. The schools involved using all of theirs. We share best practices and learn from that to make sure we know what law enforcement is doing in these situations. And that's a really big learning thing for us. And so we're trying to bring some of those ideas we see there. And one of the pieces is called Rescue Task Force. And that is a big deal where law enforcement work intimately with the Puget Sound Fire Department responding into a building when it is still not completely safe for them to do so, but they recognize that danger to try and tend to possible wounded or other casualties that may occur in these situations. So that was a big thing for us to be a part of. Moving into our monthly trends. Again, we're reviewing September, October, and November. I wanted to bring to light just a couple things. We also had a little bit of a software glitch in our calendar syncing to some of our data, but the data is correct in other areas within the report. I just wanted to point out, in moving to the all incident count, where we discuss use of force restraints, assaults on staff, student assaults, gang related, and drugs and alcohol. Within the first category of use of force, it's actually 3 and 2 instead of 2 and 2. And we're going to correct these and reprint these out, but it does show in data further on. Along with in the assaults on staff, it's actually 2 in September and 2 in October. Those were the corrections there.
Mr. Kovich?
Yes.
Can I ask, I didn't notice that. I noticed that the 2019 information wasn't getting pulled in.
Very good. So the calendar itself by name was misnamed in the data when we were collecting it, but we did catch it, and it is representing correctly. So there is sections where it says 2018 and then separated just 2019 alone. When it shows 2019 in a future chart, which I'll go to, that is actually the 2018-2019 school year.
Okay.
So good eye, appreciate that. And this is where you notice that. So when we're doing our annual comparisons for September last year to this year, we were noticing in some categories it was flat or somewhat even, and then we noticed something significant in our drugs and alcohol category. In last school year, it was in September, there were 15 incidents that involved 10 students, and this year in September we had 3. That was an 86% reduction in incidents that we were coming in contact with or recognizing in the month of September. And so it is not showing below in the charts of that specific school where those occurred for that 2019 number that shows there. In the summaries in the back of those schools are identified at the top of each summary. So that data is there. We're going to make sure we get it on the chart. When we look at October, again, as you're looking into the drugs and alcohol, Last year, 22 incidents. This year, 3. A large reduction there. And moving into November, we have 17. This year, we have 7. So that is the first time we've seen a trend in a while, looking back at our years, that it was consistent reduction in September, October, and November all the way through. I know there's why or what in that. We are trying to dial down to what that could be. At this time, our patrolling, enforcement, mentoring, other things that our officers do have not changed in anything in that point. So we're looking into other possibilities. So, but it is good to see. And then the annual comparison by race, we do have numbers that are trending down for this year in most of all the categories. And then some additional highlights towards the end would be with our SROs again. There's some notes within of going into multiple classes of teaching educational pieces to elementary and to middle out in Covington. We also have some ongoing programs of police science with the City of Kent at multiple schools, and out at Kent Lake, some things that didn't make it in. We have a very large project going on with our SROs and the PTSA groups out there of bringing in dollars to do emergency response equipments in the classroom. They have done, I'm not sure what the count is, but they've got a bucket of brand new emergency supplies for every classroom that they've been distributing. They've been going into each classroom out there with our SRO and doing educational response, along with different levels of second story evacuation and tools on how to evacuate those classrooms. So there's a great push out there. I apologize it didn't make it in on print, but we're trying to get all those in there. So if you have any questions.
I just have a comment. I was really pleased to read that Safety Officer Samantha Marino is doing the young educated ladies leading group for young women of color, because we've had our men on the move, we've had things for our young men of color, and I work and mentor with young women of color, and I'm really pleased to see that that's something that's being done.
It is good to see. She's doing a fabulous job out there, and there's a chance we may be losing her to the Seattle Police Department in February. But yeah, she's doing a great job.
Yeah, I just, if you tell her kudos, because I think it's
Will do.
great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just a quick one. So on the City of Covington, I noticed you have the 12 classes taught in September. Are those going to be classes that are continued to be taught, or are we looking at other schools, or?
Continuing is the hope.
Okay.
Karen Davey is implementing a lot of those programs out there, and as long as time allows, she's going to continue doing those. So yes.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could also get some of those in some of our other schools as well. So.
Yes, and jurisdiction I don't know will allow, but we'll do the best we can to share. So.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So I don't know, unless Officer Grove, you'd like to say a few words on your experiences?
I'm still, getting new to this partnership, and I just appreciate being here and the professional job in reporting and building relationships with Tim and the team. So I'm thrilled to be here, and appreciate your time.
Thank you for being here, yes. Okay, thank you, Officer Kovich and Grove, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're up to our 3.03, and before we get to the budget status update, we have Ken Smith to speak to 3.03, 2018-19 budget status update for November 18.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for the time to speak on this item. There's going to be 2 slides that I want to draw your specific attention to. Slide number 9 shows the enrollment trends. And when you look at that, there's this kind of shocking drop at the beginning of this year. But there's also a decline throughout the last few months of last year. And I would recommend trying to get a report together for your review of the trends in other districts, the surrounding districts, and the top 10 largest districts. You're the 4th largest district, to see what happens. I know in my former district, we saw an increase in our enrollments when we made some administrative and other changes. And then another thing, since you lost a lot of students, maybe asking the families, what a lot of people do when you lose customers, you go out and you find out, and you just ask them, why didn't you not come back to the district? Because you should know who those students are. The second one is slide 10. So slide 10 will be talking about the fund balance, and it has the note at the bottom that the fund balance policy is a certain number. After your budget extension at the last meeting, you no longer will end the year meeting the minimum fund balance policy. So your fund balance policy, policy 6000 or 6002, requires that when you can't get to that point, 60 days after the Form F-196, and that was submitted, it was either submitted on December 6th or it was locked by OSPI November 7th. So whatever the date was, you have 60 days, the superintendent has 60 days, and I'll quote from it, to create a plan to restore to the 5% level. The plan shall be presented to the board within 60 days of the submission of the district's F-196. So the clock is running to have a plan presented on how the fund balance is restored to the 5% level, which is about $17.1 million in the unassigned. There's a little confusion on your fund balance, I think, from a lot of people. There's a lot of items in there, but as your executive director of finance said last time, the real number is unassigned fund balance, which currently, or at the end of the year, August, sat at 4.9 negative. And so the budget that you have right now doesn't get to that, so then you've been basically called into action to have to create a plan and present it to the board within 60 days, so that's submission. Thank you.
All right. So we will have Mr. Rarick, to Executive Director of Budget and Finance, to present and answer any questions from the board. Thank you, Mr. Rarick.
Okay, good evening. It's my pleasure to present the October budget status report. What you see here is preliminary October data. So I know you've been through this drill, but some things do change from preliminary to final, but it tends not to be very material. Okay, so pretty similar structure to what you have seen before. I'll go over revenues by source and expenditures by program and object. We will look at enrollment, which appreciate Ken's point there that it really is kind of a topic we really need to focus on during this year. We'll look at fund balance and we'll take some questions that you may have. All right, so I think as Lisa has educated you over last year that, the tracking revenues and tracking expenditures is kind of a different drill. So you would expect expenditures to follow a certain pattern, but we collect revenues kind of unevenly, right? So when you're looking at the first slide there on slide 3, this is telling you in the far right-hand column what percentage of budgeted revenues we have collected through October year to date. Again, not really bothered that these percentages to the far right are inconsistent, shall we say. It is notable, a couple things are notable here. We're going to want to keep an eye on the local tax collections. So for the collections that we have in October, that's the last collection from calendar year 18, which was our higher collection. And you'll see in this slide and subsequent slides that those collections are coming in right around where we thought they might. The collection in April is going to be much, much lower, and that is because that's the first collection in which the $1.50 cap that the state has instituted across the state takes effect for all school districts. So you'll start to see that reflect starting in April. Okay, expenditures by program. Here, we would expect to see quite a bit more uniformity. And so you're looking down at the very bottom right-hand corner of the slide, 1819 shows that we've expended, all told, across all programs, 14.54% of our budget. And then below that, it shows a targeted number of 16.67, which is merely just 2 months of the year. So we are spending a smaller proportion of our budget than the target, which is a good thing. Of course, the budget is larger than it was last year for a variety of reasons, salary related and otherwise. So as we walk through this presentation, you'll see some cases where spending is up, but as a percentage of the budget, we're still on track. Does that make sense? Okay. Excuse me. The only area, as you look at that 14.5% targeted number, that sticks out is in the 9,700 district-wide support is the only program that exceeds the 16.7% target. A couple reasons why that might be. We did a little poking around. There are quite a bit of the larger non-salary expenditures in 9,700 tend to front load. So you might have large payments at the beginning of the year in 9,700, insurance payments, for example. So we're part of a consortium. We pay that premium right off the top. So it can tend to skew the first 2 months or 3 months as you look as a proportion of how much budget is spent. Okay. Looking at expenditures by object. With a 16.67% target, we've spent 14.54% at this point across all object codes. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. The salary numbers are tracking very closely to that target, even a little less. And you'll see the MSOC numbers, the 5, 7, 8, and 9,000 series. We're spending considerably less than the target, although you will see in a later slide that in nominal dollars, we're spending more. We're spending more money in those areas, but as a function of as a percentage of our budget, we're on track. Those are key distinctions because you'll see a slide later that will make you kind of question what this one meant. And it's this one. Or sorry, the next one. So this is year-to-date revenues comparing year-to-date October 17 through year-to-date October 18. Remember we talked about the local tax. So that looks right. That looks about what I would expect it to be. So our calendar year 17 and our calendar year 18 authorities were not drastically different. The total amount that we could raise as a district, it will be calendar year 19 where we see the big drop. So having, 3.5% less collection for local tax, not entirely unexpected. The big spike you see in the federal special line just reflects the fact that we made a lot more claims on federal money in September that accrue to fiscal year 18, but nevertheless show in the books as September. So that's also not entirely unexpected. Okay, so here's what I was talking about earlier. Just take a moment to take this slide in a bit. Okay, so in prior slides, I showed you that as a percentage of budget, we were on track both at a salary and non-salary level, right? And that each of those areas, the percentage spending was less than the target, right? So here you see another angle that tells a very different story, right? So this is actual nominal dollar expenditure, 17 October, 18 October. And you see, like last year, for travel, for capital outlay, we approved virtually nothing, okay? There was virtually no expenditures in those lines. We had a budget for it last year, but the restrictions were such that expenditures were just very, very austere, right? This year, you see more normalized spending, which shows us a big spike, right? So I thought you'd get to this slide and be worried. Remember, go back to slide 5 and see that, in fact, that level of expenditure is commensurate with the budget for those lines in this year, okay? So you're just seeing it two different ways, but what it means is, A, people are being allowed to spend their budget a little bit more this year, whereas last year we had a budget, we just didn't spend to it, right? And then in certain cases, there are some larger expenses, IT-related expenses that front-load in the year that also might tend to make like contract services and materials a little higher than they might otherwise be. Okay, this is an important slide. We actually, as a team, did a draft of this fund balance projection and ended up actually taking some money out of the fund balance projection for this very slide. Because what's happening here, and this is actually through November, the financial data you see is through October. There was a big dip, as we've gone over before, in September. We had an even further dip in October. Things have leveled out. However, we are still dropping. It's just at a much more incremental level. So even after the the F200 adjustment, we still anticipate, and again, it's the OSPI projected annual average, the number that is the average of all of the months upon which our funding will be based. We anticipate that number, we still are going to lose 110 kids, even after having adjusted it. So enrollment continues to be a concern and preoccupation of the budget office as an engine for the revenues of this district, and we'll have to just very closely monitor it and do everything we can to understand the dynamics of what's affecting not only Kent, but frankly, every peer district that I'm in touch with, in South King County, I should say. All right, so you see that basically played out in a graphical representation. Two things to note. First, the gray line, which kind of departs from the historical trajectories that you saw with the orange and the blue. So we started losing students basically April, May, and June. And what happened there is, remember we were really, really close last year in enrollment, like within like 35 kids or something on the K-12 general line. In the spring, we thought we would be 35 over, meaning that we were going to have 35 more than we budgeted. We ended up being 35 under, which is still incredibly close, but that's a 70 student swing. So as we were moving through the year, that also had a financial impact on the district. 70 students is not an immaterial amount of resource. And then I have been sending in this board update document that I think you get. As I get that count date, I'm just adding to this slide and sending that, and I'll keep you'll have that as soon as I have it, and we'll keep monitoring that as a community. So as a function of that thought process, and again, with the revenues that we get early in the year are a function of the enrollment that we estimate, not a function of the enrollment that we have, right? So once you get past January, I think it's January, the state starts to adjust your payments. So you don't want to get accustomed to the revenues you're getting now, because that's just a placeholder. And so the outlook that you have from last meeting, I think I was at like 17.5. We've drawn that down to 16.3, anticipating kind of more of the same from that yellow line. Hoping for something different, needless to say. And so, and I say this every time we look at that fund balance, every time I look at that fund balance number, I'm looking not at the total, but at the unassigned is what I really care about. And two, it really isn't about this year as much as it's about next year. So it creates a kind of a very temporary sense of stability to think that we're going to end this year. Well, every district should end this year with a fund balance because they need to be prepared for that second drop in their local tax collections. So next year's, the budget process for the 1920 budget will be a challenging one regardless of the number that we see here. I say that, I know I've said that too many times, but for the benefit of our community, that's an important point to understand. And then finally, I think your eyes are well acclimated to this chart, which tells a story whereby for 5 consecutive years, the district spent more than it received for, in round numbers, roughly $10 million a year. And 17-18 broke that trajectory, and it will be necessary then the kind of the North Star, if you will, for next year will be to achieve a sustainable non-deficit spending budget. Independent of how much fund balance we end the year with this year, the goal for 1920 is a sustainable non-deficit spending budget such that in future years we can live within our means and restore financial stability of the school district. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. I have questions, but I'll go this way, Debbie.
Okay. Yeah, so can you talk a little bit more? I know we're still seeing trends of going down on enrollment. And so I'm sure we're already starting to look at things about what adjustments we may need to make in spending. Can you give just a little bit more about what that process will be? And then in conjunction with that, I know we're going to need to start early on our planning for next year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So we're we just, we have an effective partnership with HR. We just had our meeting today about projecting enrollment for next year. And even at this point, thinking that we may project more enrollment drop next year. And in order to get to that sustainable non-deficit spending level, at a certain point, there's a relationship between the number of students you have and the number of staff you have, right? And so I imagine that, there'll be some critical conversations in the late winter, early spring to think of what that sustainable relationship is. It's hard when we are in a volatile enrollment time right now, so you don't really know what the new normal is. But we used the 3-year cohort survival model that we used last year that proved very accurate for 17-18. And using that model, we're looking at losing some more students. So
kind of building on that, the decline in enrollment, I'm going to make the assumption that it's not even across the schools, right? So some schools up, maybe, it varies.
Yes.
So low enrollment means lower revenue, but it could also mean expenses we don't need to incur if we don't have the students. So how are we working at optimizing class sizes across the district without having to incur funds while trying to basically save money for students we don't have?
Yeah. Well, this is I partner with Mariah and Jewel on this question. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but, Mariah's Dr. Harmon and Dr. Martin are going to be critical players in that conversation. But I can say that we have started the process at a school level, individual schools projecting enrollment. And then the other thing that you need to think about, that I'm thinking about all the time, is the legislature plays a really important role in this. So to the extent that they insist upon the minimum class size ratios for K-3, that is a game changer in terms of the district's flexibility to develop a 1920 budget that makes sense. you wouldn't want a situation where K-3 class sizes are yeah, you just, it limits the sense-making ability of the district in that space. So did you want to speak to that point?
Sorry. Absolutely did a phenomenal job, Ben. We are looking closely at that K-3 class size and wondering when the legislature is going to make a decision. As it is right now, we are expected to comply in this upcoming year. If they decide to postpone it for another year, that does change the relationship of the number of staff and per the students that we have. We do have allowances within our CBA in the spring should we need to balance from school to school. We do have an involuntary transfer process that we have implemented every spring, and that assists us in being able to look at areas that maybe we have overstaffing versus understaffing.
And so just thinking of the timeline, we're a little bit constrained into how fast we can act because of size and needs and then other agreements as well. So we have the ability to reshift our resources, but not necessarily as fast as enrollment might be dropping. Well, enrollment's already dropped, so meaning that we can't shift them in as fast as to catch up with that.
Correct. We have already looked at the 700 student drop and what that would look like for allocations for next year. Ben and his team just provided for us the enrollment projections for 1920, and so we're looking to see, okay, how much tighter can we look? We're doing everything possible to keep the number of staff we have on board.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'll switch to a different question on, we looked at the year-to-date spending compared to prior year.
Can you remind me what slide that was?
That would be slide 7. And specifically looking at one of the things that we always talk about what's in each line. Mm-hmm. And so contract services is an area that is both discretionary, but then also required for some of the services that are in there. And yes. So, and you may not have it here, but I think that as we go forward, and that continues to be, if it continues to be that much more over prior year, how much is us having a budget that we didn't have last year and choosing to spend on whatever, and how much is it things that we're required to spend on, because I believe like transportation is in there, maybe special education contracts.
Running start.
Yeah, things that are in there that we don't control, or we have to accept those costs whenever they come in.
Yes.
Basically.
I appreciate the question, but I can't answer it on the spot. Right. That's actually we could do a spreadsheet or something.
As we wanted to separate, what is restored budget that now we're spending, and so we're spending on whatever that is. Yeah. And then for something like homeless transportation is something that comes up just because the run rate has continued to increase, and so we should expect that to increase. Yeah. And as our running start count, we just keep sending contracts over, and they look like consultants in here. Right. But really, we're just sending on BEA money to Green River Community College or. Right, and I think that'll help us understand what's general things that are going through our cost structure, and then what is things that we are either can or cannot control spending on. Yeah. For the future, please. And that was all my questions.
My questions have been answered, so thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say mine was the same with enrollment.
All right. Okay. So I had a similar question to Director Hardy, and I also wanted to talk about travel, even though that's not a huge amount up there. It is a variance, and one of the things that I was trying to understand, even looking at contract services, when we look at our vouchers, that's it's in our agenda at the bottom.
Yes.
The vouchers.
Yes. I don't have it on me, but.
But the travel amounts don't add up to the numbers that show up on the financial statements. So if I look at all of October travel costs, it doesn't come up to the 27, it comes up to like 8,000. So I'm wondering, is there somewhere that I'm not looking at when I'm comparing vouchers?
These are going to be year to date, right? So that you're going to show, and which slide are you looking at?
So September and October, right? So the travel, on 5? That one's fine too. It's the 22, that works. So it shows 22 year to date.
Right, and you're comparing it to just the voucher for October?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So September, October.
So you're adding the two?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm not sure. I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it as well. Okay, so that's year-to-date. Pardon me, I'm looking at the current month of 17.
Right.
And I'm only looking at October, and it shows about 8,000. So then I was questioning the other sections, like contract services. Are we not seeing something in the vouchers that add up to that amount? Or?
What information could I provide you that would answer your question? Could I bring you a spreadsheet of some kind or a?
Yeah, how do I guess going back to contract services.
Basically tied at the 22,000?
Yeah.
Is that would be? Like give you something that shows what the 22,000 is? I can do that.
That would be great.
Okay.
So I guess I also would like to know, because I do look at the voucher, and if it's sort of a meaningless document, then it doesn't make sense for me to look at that. So I want to know, where does travel costs that we encumber, where are they going? If we're not seeing it in the vouchers, we're not seeing it.
Can I phone a friend here? Lisa's itching to answer this question.
Excuse me. There's a very simple explanation. The voucher report is prepared primarily to give you a listing of the vouchers that you're approving at any given meeting. And those are also run from check run to check run. So those very well could even overlap a month, especially with the holidays that we've seen over the past over this time period. The accounts payable check run is done every 2 weeks. So when you see a typical voucher report, not including a holiday month where we don't meet every 2 weeks.
Well, I'm looking at the dates, the total dates up on top, not
exactly.
the dates.
So perfect example is there could be a report dated, I'm just going to throw out dates here, November 1st through October 25th or whatever. So you see what I mean? It's not going to align with a monthly financial report.
Going back several months.
Okay, so that just explains, it's a timing variation. But as Mr. Rarick just said, we could easily provide that for you on a monthly, same data for a month.
Okay.
For a clean month, so that you could compare.
Okay,
yeah.
That works.
It's just for the purpose of the vouchers that you're approving. That's why we run that report, because we want you to see every check run.
But we are seeing the voucher information before you're running the checks, right? Or it's not always.
It's after the.
We're seeing it after.
After.
For the payments.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then let's see. I had one other question. That was it. All right. No other questions. Thank you, Mr. Rarick. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. All right. This time we have Michelle Bettinger to speak on 4.01, Superintendent Travel, and then followed by Shannon Jeffson Hernandez. And that's it. 4.01.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Bettinger. I live in Renton, 98058. I just want to first acknowledge, Superintendent, that I did receive your email during your executive session about answering some clarifying questions. I haven't had a chance to look at it because I'm trying to focus on the meeting, but I did notice I got that email during your executive session. I just would like to ask the board to consider the fact on 4.01 that the superintendent, 2 of those items on that request appear to be for personal gain. And the AASA travel, again, I haven't seen evidence that the superintendent is upholding the ethics in a consistent manner of AASA. So I would ask you all to vote no on that item. And if I may, in the interest of time, on the 4.02, I would like this board to make a motion to have the state auditor investigate the 3.2. The state auditor is already involved in the budget on a regular audit, so I would like the board to make a motion and a vote on the 3.2, asking the state auditor to review that. I think it's crucial to rebuild trust in this district. If there's nothing to hide, it's a quick, easy, economical fix. And if there's nothing to hide, it should be a no-brainer to do that. So I still have grave concerns. I feel like I've been asking honest questions for 15 months. I feel like I've seen board members ask questions for months, and answers are not forthcoming. And so I think it's time that we all get a clear answer, and the state auditor, it seems to be a reasonable and cost-effective way to do that. So I'm asking you to make the motion and pass that and have the state auditor look at that. 3.2. Thank you.
All right.
Shannon Jepson Hernandez, Mill Creek Middle School, 620 Central Avenue, Kent, Washington, 98030. I am standing here to speak regarding 4.01 and also requesting that you please vote no and not approve it. I'd like to refer back to 3.03 to give my reasoning for this. First of all, I'm wondering if we are being set up to hear another excuse of fiscal failure being blamed on poor enrollment estimates, with a promise of a following year being the moment of actual recovery. Mr. Rarick's comments of not being bothered by inconsistencies is deeply concerning. How do we share a budget report with such statements preceding vague explanations? Telling us that we are going to start to reflect actual accurate numbers in April is the poor excuse KSD has been using for the last 3 years. Pushing your actual answers out to April, which is essentially the end of the school year, makes it too late to manage. Stop waiting till April for everything. Our concerns include statements like we are spending smaller portions of the budget, and that is good, but then it's followed by statements of we are spending more in those areas. Declaring we are on track and this is normal spending is deeply concerning because this report identifies some key problems. As a district that has struggled financially, we allowed a budget to pass that included increased spending. Normal spending was how it was described. Increased is not normal when you have a district in trouble financially. Why did we feed the budget for this year? Why did we not continue with a conservative budget? Especially when talks of RIF started immediately following the teacher bargaining. I spent the last 2 years struggling to work with limited resources due to poor fiscal responsibility by KSD leadership. We all did our part to support this district and in turn expect our KSD leadership to do the same. We lost our teammates, we lost our SPED supports, we lost our leaders, and we are paying for that loss. Simultaneously, our superintendent is continuing to request travel expenditures to accommodate his role. We lost $100,000 alone at Mill Creek budget this year, and we are dealing with that loss as best as we can. If your budget report is setting us up for another year of RIFs, we expect the superintendent to do his part to prevent as many losses as possible and tighten the KSD leadership purse strings. I want to know, how is the superintendent of this district being gone outside of our school going to financially support this district? How is it going to support our children? How is it going to support our enrollment? How is it going to support our growth? We have not seen any of those things be benefited because of past travel, and I want to know how this year is going to be any different. And I seriously think you should consider those things before you approve this travel. Thank you.
So, let's see. 1 second, please. So I would like to ask a board member to make a motion to approve 4.01 superintendent travel.
I move that we approve 4.01 superintendent travel.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right. A motion has been made a motion and second has been made to approve superintendent travel. Now I'm going to ask for the board for discussions and questions.
So I have concerns, and they stem from our conversation just yesterday. We are struggling to understand information about the financial statements, to understand budget recovery, and as we go into next year, and as we talk through this, there was a very critical meeting October 17th. It was a work session where we talked at length at how the budget how the financial statements would end. We talked about fund balance, we talked about everything, and everyone was there except for Dr. Watts, and I believe he said it was because he was at a Broad Academy event somewhere else. And so given that this is so close in, I mean, we're talking the next 2-3 months, I'm concerned that it's not in the best interest of the district to approve this.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments?
I don't disagree.
You don't disagree? Okay. So now, my proposal was going to be a new motion to exclude the AASA because I feel like the board members have sacrificed as well. We are not going to our conferences. We haven't been going to our conferences. And I don't like the fact that we are reinstating travel budget when in 3 years from now we are going to be in this situation again. So we still need to be austere, and so I don't feel comfortable in approving the AASA trip. Regarding Broad, I think that was something that we had approved already, and it's not a cost to the district. And so the ERDI, I would like to know from Dr. Watts what exactly that would entail before we make a decision.
Can you be more specific when you say what?
ERDI, what will you be doing at ERDI?
So I think I've shared with our board and those who have interest, ERDI is an opportunity to provide supporting remarks, consulting, or consultative information that supports products and services that are entered into panel discussions that support public education. We provide feedback, we provide critical discussion, many times to help the products and services and those leaders who provide those supports and services to improve it. And these are 4 days of work from early morning to evening, and we are provided the stipend to provide that support. And so that we know, part of that stipend goes to support a scholarship that goes to Kent Schools Foundation.
So on ASAA, and one of the reasons to put a motion on the table is so we can also have discussion on it. So that's part of having that. So on ASA, I know that given that what we have going on in the district, and though I do strongly believe that professional development is a crucial part of all learning, I think I would agree that maybe ASA this year would be something that we should consider not authorizing given current state. So at some point after we have more discussion, then I would need to withdraw a motion because I made the motion, and but after we've had more discussion.
The proper protocol, even if you're going to vote it down, would not be to withdraw, to call for the vote, and then the vote will carry whether or not it will pass or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Is February 17th through the 20th, is that the week after midwinter break, or is that midwinter break?
It's midwinter break.
It's midwinter break, okay.
But you realize the administrators are not off during that time.
So are there any other discussions?
No,
we take a vote. All right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. No. For 4.01 superintendent travel. Okay. All right. Now I'm proposing a new motion excluding the AASA travel. So
you mentioned Broad as well. So I just want to get
Broad and sorry, I'm excluding ERDI and AASA.
Okay.
and I'm comfortable with Broad. So that's my new proposal.
Chair can make the motion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I make a motion to approve Broad. I don't have the information. Broad Academy 2018-19 cohort session 3, January 28th to February 1st, 2019.
I'll second that.
All right. Are there any other discussions?
Well, so I'll bring up an additional point that the idea of this is that it's, I'm assuming professional development, something to help the district. So far, it's not clear how it has helped the district. And we have specifically talked about superintendent goals, and that's what we want from the expectations for performance, and this doesn't seem to support that. So if we're specifically concerned about meeting the expectations we've already set, I'm not clear about how attending this supports those expectations.
May I offer? So professional development, which we have discussed, is just like teaching. So I understand what you're saying. And I guess the question would be, at what point do we know that there's evidence that the pedagogical practices that happen in our classroom, the andragogy or the professional learning that happens for adults, at what point does that learning show? So professional development is something that actually should be the gift that keeps on giving. So I don't know that there is a specific point in time that we can measure, but this is a professional development opportunity. It is, again, no cost to the district, and it is designed for that purpose to provide professional development.
What I think would be a good idea, so that we understand it a little bit better, is for, like, when we have gone to NSBA and all, as we come back and we report to each other, it'd be really great just for you to tell us what you've learned there.
Absolutely. And what I can do is actually, what we've done on staff already, participate in ongoing PD that supports the work that is equity-based, that supports educational leadership. I've actually I'll explain this during my report out, but spoiler alert, I did have an opportunity to meet with students, most recently at iGrad, to conduct empathy interviews, which was a strategy that is used to discover exactly what our schools are providing, how they're providing support and service to our most important customer, and we're continuing those as an example. So more information I could share with you and be happy to.
Any other discussions? All right, so I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
All right, motion passes. All right, 4.02, independent audit, and we have Michelle Bettinger to speak about the independent audit. Well, would you like to add? Okay. And then followed by Ken Smith.
I have a couple additional comments on the 4.02 now that I'd like to address. I think that the board should make a motion to place Superintendent Calvin J. Watts on administrative leave, paid administrative leave, pending a complete investigation into the finances of this school district. I suggested that a quick economical solution is to ask the state auditor to investigate that, particularly that 3.2 interfund transfer. Again, I know I got an email from you during the executive session, but I still think that the superintendent has not proven to be upfront, honest. It is nearly a month later on that 3.2 transfer, and the public still hasn't heard. So I think it would be a most efficient and effective way. You're not taking any money away from him, but I think when the superintendent is here, I know just personally speaking to him that he is disruptive. That, can you be more specific, is my favorite question, because that question means I don't feel like answering. In my personal opinion. So I'm asking the board to make the motion prior to the audit to place the superintendent on paid administrative leave so the audit can progress unencumbered. Thank you.
All right, Ken Smith, please.
Hi, my name is Ken Smith. I'm an accounting professor, and I saw and a former school board member. Saw the scope. I'm concerned about the scoping of this audit. It uses terms kind of in a lay term, and I took the terms and put it into the search and found it's some firm that's kind of trying to share it to lay audiences, but you want to be more specific, I think. Each audit should generally be done under a set of professional standards. So that could be if it's an audit of CPAs of financial statements, the American Accounting CPA Institute of CPA statement auditing standards. If it's an internal audit, it's the red book. If it's a governmental audit, GAGAS, it's the yellow book, et cetera. So I think you want to be much more specific in what are the professional standards, and that you're hiring someone who has certification in those standards. So a CIA if it's an internal audit, a CPA if it's a financial statement audit, a CFE if it's a fraud audit, examples. The other thing is, I think this audit really is for management and management's view, but I thought the impetus for it was for the citizens, what they wanted to have. And I've been listening. Here's what I think they want. I think, number one, they want, and I sent this to you an email on Tuesday, December 4th. I think the citizens want an assessment of the sufficiency of written policies and procedures related to budget and accounting and contracting purchasing, both to comply with laws, regulations, state accounting manual, sufficiency to ensure accountable spending and transparency. Number two, an examination of the adherence of the district to its written policies, et cetera. Three, interviews of current and former school district accounting, budgeting, and accounting finance staff. Four, evaluations of emails, documents, and recorded school board meetings. And five, seeking to understand the primary story about where you got into the financial deficits. And I think the finance report that the Citizen Finance Review Group did in April, and we've shared with you, kind of tells most of the story. I listened to the work session you had, and there was a lot of questions of, well, why are we here? You're here because of one really simple fact, because the superintendent spent more money. Expenditures were more than revenues. I mean that's why. And this board, and some of the board here, for 45 straight months, spent more money than you brought in. So when your executive director of finance says don't do deficit spending, it's because that's what you did. Now maybe you weren't paying attention, maybe you didn't know how to read the financial report, but the reason why this district is in financial trouble is for 45 straight months, starting in May of 2014 through February of 2018, the executive of the organization and the board approved deficit spending for 45 straight months. That's why you ran out of money. Some people say, well, I want to know if it's this reason or that reason. It's like your balanced budget at home. Is it because you were going to the sports teams? Is it because you drank too much beer? Is it because you sent your kids to training for the great thing that they're doing? It doesn't matter. The point is, whoever manages the budget is supposed to spend less than what they bring in. And you did it for 45 straight months. That's what happened at Kent. And you have to kind of be honest about that and then try to get it out. Thank you.
All right, I would like to ask board member to make a motion to approve our 4.02 independent audit, please.
I so move that we approve 4.02 for independent audit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes. A motion has been made to approve 4.02 independent audit. Are there any discussions or questions, please?
Yes, I have one. So we did include this in the state. Did we not make that request already?
So I have contacted our auditor prior to the questions that were asked today. As routinely, our auditors, I think, are starting next year's audit, starting Monday. So this is certainly something we can include, and it's not going to cost additional for us to include the 3.2 question. So that will be asked, and I'm meeting for a risk management meeting as well on Monday, I believe. So.
And so to be clear, the motion that we're talking about is to start the process for an RFP to get a list of vendors that does what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So there'll be multiple times this will come back to us for approval of the bid through the new bid process that we're approving later, as well as the approval of the actual contract itself. And so we will see this, at least the direct motion that we're talking about, come back multiple times to us. And I believe...
Well, I think Director Daniels is asking about the state auditor and the inquiries that were just, the constituents just asked. We don't need to make a specific motion to do questions to our auditors. We can freely ask them what we want to see. So this will be one of the questions we'll ask and get. So I want to be clear, we're not ignoring the comments, or, well, we typically don't respond to the comments, but.
Discussed it before.
Yeah, we've discussed that before, so.
I just want to be clear that the 17-18 school year is included in this scope. So not only in the state auditor level, but at any additional levels that we have somebody look at from a performance auditing standpoint regarding policies. We could direct it from a specific forensic auditing and actually focus on something, as well as do a deeper level financial statement audit than the state auditor produces.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think it's just good to call things out.
All right, any other discussions, comments, questions?
So just a comment on this process in particular. So what we are doing this motion, and then what we are asking is for assistance from the district to write the RFP to send out. The board would then review it, and then
Board would receive and review.
Receive and review to be able to do this. And this particular audit would report to the board on this.
Well, I just want to be clear, we're not requesting assistance. We're starting the process, and it would follow the normal, whoever normally does this, it would go into there. But yes, that the actual product comes to the board and the
But
team.
I'm just saying that as a board, we're not writing the RFP. We don't have the...
Not on our own.
Right. That's why I'm saying requesting assistance on that. So, sorry to clarify what that was. But just because, but the process would be that it comes to the board for approval, and the board would be doing that.
All right, so if there are no more discussions or questions, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. All right, consent agenda, we're going to 5.0, and we don't have any comment cards. So, let's see, would anyone like to pull? I have a list of them myself, so.
I would like to pull 5.06 and 5.07, please.
5.07, okay. Anyone else?
I have 5.06 as well, but actually 5.18.
5.18.
Just gift acceptance. And so a question specifically on one of the items.
All right, got it.
On that sheet.
Ross, you had 5.06 as well.
5.06 as well.
Okay. So I have 5.03, 5.05, 5.06, 5.07. To write this down. 5.08 and 5.12.
You said 5.04? Is that what you also said?
No. 5.03, 5,
okay.
6, 7, 8, 12.
And then 18, right?
18 is Ross, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? The entire consent agenda. All right. Okay, we'll start with 5.03.
Oh, we need a motion first.
Sorry. To approve.
So I'll move that we approve the consent agenda less 5.03, 5.06, 5.07, 5.08, 5.12, and 5.18.
You say 5.05?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No, you didn't.
Oh, I didn't say it.
Yeah.
5.05, thank you. Do you want me to do it again?
We're good?
We're good?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Okay, we will start with 5.03, which are which actually, I apologize, I think that's fixed. It just needed to call for performance management audit review instead of financial audit, but I think that's fixed. So moving on to 5.05 is the High School Instructional Council new courses. Just had a technical question. Is that a new council, or how is that different from the Instructional Materials Committee?
Certainly. It's not a new council. It's a part of our board policy and procedure. The High School Instructional Council focuses specifically on high school courses, and the council meets whenever there is an update or a new course or a change to a course title that needs to basically make its way through our system to be added to the course catalog.
So where does the Instructional Materials Committee come in, or do they?
Well, with the High School Instructional Council, the Instructional Materials Committee only comes in if there are new resources or materials that need to be reviewed. The Instructional Materials Committee sort of exists, I don't want to necessarily say parallel, but it's a different committee that meets to review pre-K-12 instructional materials that need to go through the approval process. They're also a part of any field tests that we might need to conduct. It goes through the Instructional Materials Committee for that.
Thank you.
I have a question too. Are these classes, are they designated at specific schools at this point in time?
Right now, they'll be added to our district course catalog, and then the social studies, all the courses listed for social studies will be designated to Kent Ridge.
And is the Math Essentials kind of a remediation type class?
The Math Essentials course is a course in the past that has been, students have been assigned to that course as sort of a recovery or catch-up course. What we're doing right now is for our seniors who are looking for a waiver for SBA requirements. This is an opportunity for them to have access to the locally determined assessments and produce collections of evidence that could take the place if they had not passed the SBA. So this course is primarily for our seniors.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Ms. West. All right. Moving on to 5.06. Vice President.
5 first. Just going
we did 5.
Oh, is that
We're on
5?
6.
Okay, sorry. I pressed it off.
Okay, 5.06, Vice President Strauss, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more about this, and I know it's replacing laptops at the elementary school, so if you just speak a little more to that.
Yes, so our one-to-one initiative in this district is at least 5 years old, and the plan for implementation follows that. And so as of this past year, the previous practice was to just follow the plan that was established in 2012. And so this under the last levy. So there's I think a technical piece that needs to be fixed in this agenda item, because the dollars that are coming from this are actually partially split for the expenditures for this school year, because we're actually closing out the previous tech levy and also spending dollars from the new tech levy. And so as we go into that, this is kind of rounding out that last expenditure from the final pieces of the previous tech levy. And as part of that, we're also reevaluating what this will look like moving forward. So this is kind of completing the initial plan. And that initial plan and rollout was for those elementary schools who started that one-to-one early, they're actually far enough along that they are due for replacement. But as we started to investigate that process, we realized it doesn't make much sense to replace laptops in some buildings when we're not fully one-to-one across our district. So moving forward, we're not going to continue in that particular practice, but that is what was promised in the plan that was presented under the previous tech levy, and we are completing that work. So that's why that looks a little bit disjointed.
Yeah, and I think for myself, at some point, I think it would be great to get an update really on how we're using those in classrooms as well, Dr. Watts. So
So we actually have a plan. We've talked in executive cabinet and have a plan for our coming work session around our one-to-one initiative, and we'll combine and partner with curriculum instruction and other communities to talk about what that looks like in the classroom as well, and also the revamp of that plan to incorporate how all of those devices are being used, as well as our smart boards, not just our laptops for students. So that is coming, and it is well past time. Thank you. Yes.
Well, mine's more of a procedural concern. We're being asked to approve $2.5 million of spending without any support. I know what it's for, but there's no purchase order, there's no contract being referenced, there's no showing of how we're accounting for these assets, how they're going to be distributed to the schools. I understand the idea, and I know that it's the use of the tech levy dollars in the way that we want to use it. But approving this here basically means I'm not going to be able to see any of the things I want to see before this gets approved. And so I'm concerned that I'm not necessarily willing to do that without that information.
So I'm not opposed. This actual agenda item was a test case. So this is a test case for policy 6211, which hopefully will be adopted, which you just adopted in the consent agenda. And so asking that certain purchases, regardless of how they were funded or what for, now come before you if they're over $25,000. Under previous practice, policy, and procedure, this is one that would have fallen through the cracks. Because you gave the authority to spend on tech levy, we would not have brought this to you prior to. So this is showing up kind of as a test for what would the board like to see when we start to bring these kind of requests forward, what information needs to be included. So this is one that, yes, is a real spend request, but it's also one kind of like the policy is new. So we're trying to figure out what information is needed to be able to say, okay, what do you need to see when you want to make these decisions?
What I think was that this actually would fall under 6210 for me. This is a capital asset, and so that's where I'd want to see more from the capital asset side of how we've approved this through that capital process.
So under the OSPI accounting manual, this would not show up as a capital asset under OSPI's accounting procedures. It doesn't show up under that 9,000 series, our laptop purchases.
Okay,
so it wouldn't have, and that's why I said this is one of those examples of as we've gone through this process, it's like this is that kind of gap or loophole that I was talking about, and so I'm okay. I'm trying to figure out what it is you want to see or would like to see, and I heard you say, is it the actual PO? Is it the vendor? What?
You know, is this an authority to go out and actually do this? but like, if we're purchasing from a vendor, so a vendor's identified, you know, usually we might have seen them from a bid process before that, if it was out for multiple bids. Granted, it may have already been chosen, so out of that bid process go. The purchase order that shows, you know, I don't even see like a per unit cost, or I see a per unit cost there, I apologize. And kind of anything that goes along with it, so I kind of know how this lines up with expectations for purchasing.
Okay, and this one is a little bit different because there was a bid process, but because we are further along in our technology levy and the vendor that we use to provide our resources, it's not a new vendor. It's just we're making a new purchase over a certain dollar amount, and so we need to bring that to you. So I'll actually capture that, and so you'll see it again as that piece, but it's helpful to know kind of, like I said, this was the test case for, as we move forward, what needs to be there so we can get these approved.
Fundamentally, I'm okay with the subject of the purchase. It's more of the process of going through I'm not as comfortable with yet.
Okay. And as we will continue to work this through, and we'll try it again in January.
Thank you. And
Being that, though, I'm interested in then just actually moving this to January unless there's any reason. I want to hear, is there any reason why we couldn't move this? Are we losing anything out by deferring this?
So, I believe some of the technology staff would say we're putting at risk the use of older laptops and devices. There's always a risk of failure and other things. I'm going to step out on a limb and say that it's not that catastrophic, that we could not do that if the board could not delay that decision if the board has concerns. I'd rather you be comfortable with the expenditure since it's so large than to do that. I'm willing to wait if you feel comfortable waiting.
For me, I'm willing to accept that risk given we're a week away from winter break.
So there is a delay, though, in purchasing. So I just want to be clear that when you authorize the purchase, they don't magically show. So they're not sitting, right, so they're not sitting on the shelf waiting for someone to buy them and they're all going to show up the next day. But
Can we get that information?
Yes, and I'm okay with waiting until January. I'm not saying that to encourage you to not delay. I'm just saying that it still will be a process. So it could very well be February before devices get into schools or later, once it hits the January board.
And I think, I'm sorry for you, but I'm ready to make a motion. Defer 5.06 technology levy purchase to the next general board meeting, which is January 9th, 2019.
Okay.
Second that.
Sorry. What do you think, Commissioner?
No motion would be necessary. Certainly there's a motion on the table, you can vote on it, but for the consent agenda, you could just make a motion for those items that you wish to include and not necessarily make a motion on that item. But since there's a pending motion on the table.
I think and I know how you say that, but at the same way, though, I kind of feel more comfortable if we say that we want to move it to the next one, just so we know that it's there.
Fair enough.
Okay. So I did second it.
All right. Any other discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Right, motion passes. We are going to 5.07. Director Strauss.
Yeah, so, and I know we talked a little bit about this when we talked about PD. I think I just wanted to know just a little bit more about how this vendor how we came to this vendor. So a little bit more about the process.
Members of our IT department researched our vendors. There weren't a whole lot of vendors that had a wide range of digital platform options. The other vendor that we looked closely at was Kite. And when we boiled down the two of these, we really had a choice. We had about a fourth of the content topics with Kite versus Who Knew It. They offered about 400 with some more coming. Who Knew It currently offers about 1,600 course content pieces with the ability to, for us, there's a greater ability to personalize those courses as well as create our own and to use Canvas coupled with Who Knew It to bundle courses. And then the key here too was that Who Knew It gave us a greater ability to personalize our professional development. So when we think about ESSA and those 6 criteria for PD, Who Knew It had a much stronger correlation and greater capacity for us to create sustained job-embedded, ongoing, in-depth PD using the components they had to offer than Kite, the two that we were able to find as quality digital platforms.
So on just a follow-up question, so on those ones that we do personalize, do we then own those courses so we could use them again, or?
Well, we will be able to use them within the platform for as long as a subscription for the platform.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. So do we know, so it says district-wide, does that mean anyone literally in the district can use it?
Yes, that was another strong selling point, is that these would be classes that we would be able to open up classes accessible to any employee for a variety of purposes across a wider variety of content areas as well.
And has it had the opportunity to be tested or piloted, or has anyone?
Not in our district, no.
Have you connected
We're
with
using
folks?
it as what?
So,
there we go.
So, yes, in interesting and different way. So Who Knew It was a tool that we had prior in the district. So we actually had it, and it was not being utilized. It wasn't implemented effectively. It wasn't being utilized as a solution. And it kind of sat on the shelf. And so moving forward, what we realized is that there are gaps in common skills, basic skills across our district that need to be filled, whether it's central admin staff or school-based staff. And one of the ways that an electronic or digital platform can meet that is it allows learners to engage in their own space when they're available. So how they can use their principal effective ed, other learning time opportunities, and not have to necessarily come and have it delivered face-to-face or without the travel. It also allows supervisors, managers, other staff to kind of assign tasks so we can go through something common together. Even though we're doing it separately, we can all be progressing through those things in a common way because we've all been assigned these courses or these tasks to kind of look into and review. It also allows us to optimize and digitize, if we choose, some of those required or mandatory annual trainings that have to happen, and be able to check and see who's done that, how it's been completed. So, I mean, there's ways that that can be used. And we probably moved away from it before we were thoughtful about what were the purposes and intentions and how could it be used appropriately and effectively in the district.
I'd like to add to that with Who Knew It, this time it would be funded out of Title II, which is absolutely an allowable expense under Title II. We're also talking about new leadership and new ways of working together, and we talked a lot about that in the PD presentation with cross-community collaboration. This has been a cross-community collaboration between IT, professional development, and they've already begun to develop the planning for that. When we did our Title II allowable expenditure requests, IT submitted this request, we walked through it with them, we thought about how would we use this before we budgeted it into Title II. So before we even brought it to the board, we have a very careful, collaborative discussion to say, how would we use it moving forward and how does that fit in our overall PD needs?
Is there a level of expectation of use? I mean, how is it going to be voluntary or is it going to be?
Absolutely, and under Title II, we have certain grant requirements to demonstrate our use of those funds.
Thank you.
So I apologize. I was thinking of Who Knew It in its kind of purity in the new form. It was, prior to that, it was atomic learning. Yes, and so when we wrote the grant, we did not include Who Knew It by name because that wasn't approved. We included an online digital platform resource. So IT, in conjunction with the professional development team, have been working on looking at how we can bundle courses or possibly personalize courses and offer those for clock hours through an online platform, as well as for training requirements for other certification in our labor associations.
So are there any other questions, comments? Okay. All right, thank you on that one. Now we are moving on to 5.08. Pardon me, I think Zach Stockdale would like to speak to 5.05. Going back.
Zach Stockdale, actually now Milton, Washington. I don't live in Auburn anymore. I just had a concern when I saw it pop up on the agenda because I was the KA rep on the High School Advisory Council, or whatever all that acronyms are, for the last multiple years. And this was the first time I had heard about the meeting. And I had checked with Christy, and she's like, what? So I have concern that part of the, as a KA rep was on there, was to make sure that teacher workload and all those issues were addressed whenever new courses were added and looked at. It was just part of that job. And so I'm mildly concerned that it popped up without anyone at KA knowing about it going against the year. And I'm actually I would credit to most likely being due to staff turnover at central office and just not knowing how it happened, how it had been going in previous years. But it was a concern when I saw it came up, and I wanted to make sure I expressed that to the board, that's something, especially if you want to talk about the partnerships and making sure that teacher voices are being included both as a content teacher and as a union workload issue. So, because I also got to I'd be able to speak as a classroom teacher too. I wore 3 hats on the committee. So anyway, that was just a concern as I saw it come up. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so going to 5.08. third reading of Policy 1610, Conflicts of Interest. So I'm the only one who's speaking to it, and I know this is going to pass. I watched the video. I was unable to make it on November 28th, but I did watch the video. I think I have the same concern as I mentioned during that meeting that Debbie read out, is that I feel like the original version of that, and I don't seem to have, that was 1610, sorry, 1712. 1712. First of all, I didn't understand why superintendent is called out separately when there is a conflict of interest portion for staff. But also, I think it explicitly is giving permission to hire spouses or dependents when 1712 explicitly says no. So I'm concerned about it. So I will be voting no on this to replace it, but I know it's going to pass. And I also, let's see, I did notice that the section C and D speaks of spouse, not dependent, but the paragraph below it talks about spouse or dependent. So that's another thing that may need to be changed. So that was my comment. So anybody else has come?
Because if we don't like the language, then this is our first review since a long time that we've reviewed this. So if we don't like the language, then I think we can go to the fourth reading. So the concern is, is there enough of new language that you like that we would approve it and then immediately revise it? Or do you want to remove it and then wait till it's revised to everyone's satisfaction?
Well, I don't think I'm going to get to my satisfaction because I like the 1712. I like the fact that we are not hiring spouses and dependents after the fact. I think it can.
What do you mean after the fact?
Well, after we are on the board or after we have been hired.
An existing board member, and then you hired the spouse or dependent after that. Was there, we talked, when you weren't there, we talked about is it WASDA language? What is it?
So it is WASDA language, and we had a bit of a discussion around several of the lettered pieces here, and especially the piece about substitute teachers, and the conversation that you all had at that time was about, given our small guest teacher pool, did we want to restrict that? And although we're not in the minds of WASDA when writing this, we talked about how WASDA writes policies across our 295 districts. And so in small districts, it's even more difficult to find guest teachers. And so you don't want to restrict opportunities based on that relationship. Now, it is WASDA language. You can always alter that. I would recommend that if we're going to start moving in that direction, we want to build in the space and time to then have another review to ensure that what we're adding is actually legal and appropriate, because we tend to lean on WASDA for at least that initial piece. But again, if policy is your bidding, so if you're not comfortable with that, then it doesn't belong here. It's here because when we met on the 14th, this was supposed to come to consent agenda today.
Right, and I wasn't here, but I did put a letter together. So I just want to speak for myself that there was a reason why a 1712 was created, and I don't know what that reason is, but it was very restrictive in making certain that the superintendent and the board of directors don't have family members that are.
So for whatever reason, WASDA chose in their update to include new language. And so
And I think Director Hardy made a point at some point, not in this one, but he said that doesn't necessarily make it a good practice.
But we need to ensure that it's legal in what we're doing. So we may not agree, but we need to build in the space for that review of whatever we're suggesting to alter. If we start to get too far away from that, then WASDA is no longer our guide for updating our policies, and that's okay. But
we're deviating for 6211 and 6220 from WASDA.
We're starting to deviate for quite a few. I would argue that some of these are starting to get quite wordy and reflective. And so as we start to do that, just be aware that we need to build in that space for that kind of legal lens to take place.
And I can see on this one how this was designed for small districts. Because we're such a large district, I don't think it really applies to us, the spouse and dependents and things.
Then why change it, I guess, that's my question.
I'm hearing that we at least want to talk about it more, not necessarily vote it down, but take it to a fourth reading and remove it off here.
Okay. All right, any other comments? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to 5.12. 6220, purchasing contracts bidding. What did I have on that? 6220. 6220. I'm okay. Ross and I discussed because I needed clarification. I'm still not completely clear on it, but I understand the theory behind it, and so the 6220, the problem I had with that is that the language calls on the board making decisions, and I don't know if that was a technical error or not, but it's not talking about the district calling for bids, and but it's talking about the board being responsible, so that might be just a technical error. It needs to be fixed. I just noticed that today. 6220 policy.
But
where in the policy?
So for example, under B exemptions, it says the board may waive bid requirements for purchases.
Yeah, and A.
Is an example of.
Yeah, it says board for all the areas.
So.
So whenever the estimate cost of furniture, supplies, equipment will cost such and such, over $75,000, the board will follow the formal competitive bidding process by preparing clear and definite plans, et cetera. So that probably just needs to be changed.
So I think it's unclear enough to where like the district overall is following these individual processes.
Right.
But we're seeking the board retains some of these things like being able to waive bid requirements and approve the bids and things like that.
All right, so, but this one says we're doing all the work.
Right.
So we have to change that.
Okay.
And I think I read it differently. I read it that like on B on exemptions, the board may waive the bid requirements that the district.
I'm on A.
Okay, well, B also said the one that, let me look at A really quick. That they would still have to come through the board, so even if the district did their part, they'd be bringing it to the board for the final decision, and the board, what you're saying, the board will follow the informal competitive bidding process.
Yeah, if you look at C, it talks about board may by resolution reject any or all bids. Are we doing that?
But you wouldn't want us to pass. That's
No.
that's something where you'd have to take action. Yeah.
The concern that I see on A is that it talks about the board requiring quotes and
Yeah.
requiring all these things, which suggests that
preparing.
it's the board requiring of the district, but the policy applies overall. From what I remember, our discussion, our intent was that we require the district to follow these guidelines under the policy, and we retain the requirement to approve the final bid, reject the others, or reject all of them, and any exemptions, anything like that.
It's just change of words in several places. We're from board to district.
So I would like to ask that maybe we move this and have another reading so we can have a discussion about which specific areas. I don't want to take a guess at which ones you want to move and which ones you don't. I'd rather us kind of go through that and so that they're correctly moved or changed.
Okay, all right. So do we need to make a motion?
I got it I'm getting them all ready.
Okay. All right, 5.18, Ross, please.
I have questions about the nature of the donation of, let me get it up, services, professional development services by an organization I do not know, and what those services entail, how this donation was acquired, and what are we seeking to do with this? Normally, donations are to schools for the benefit of the direct school, boosters, things like that. This seems out of the ordinary. I want to know how it came about. So,
through vendor relationship and talking to some of our contractors and vendors in IT and asking for PD supports for technology resources that are being brought along, or investments that we've made through things like our Tableau server and other, leveraging those partnerships to get them to provide the PD rather than charge us for that. So it's an in-kind service. And so to that end, they tend to have a flat rate fee of what they charge per hour for a consultant to come out and do the training. And that's how they get to the dollar amount of what it is set. It's not so much that we say we're going to get $50,000 in training. It's that they would charge this amount for this number of hours for this number of days to receive that training.
And I guess aside from like a program where you win an award or a grant, I don't know how this gets around our gifts from vendors policy, which would specifically exclude gift from an existing vendor above a certain amount. I would think $58,000 is above that amount.
So that's for an individual. This is actually for PD support for an organization. So this is not, so I would say that, obviously, since I signed off on it, I interpreted it differently of if someone is going to offer us PD support. So if any of our vendors are offering PD support and it's not a personal benefit to an individual, then it's not a violation of a gift policy. So if one of our curriculum resources wanted to offer PD for our teachers, I would hope that we would accept that and not want them to charge us for it through that. And that's not a violation of a teacher's gift acceptance policy or gift acceptance policy regulation is how I'm interpreting that. However, all of this is new and we're living in kind of that test case as we update these policies of what does it look like when it's lived.
And then my next concern is if they're not a current vendor, or maybe they are they gifting this? Is there, how do we know there's not an expectation of something in return for this gift of services? I know this is in the format of the normal gift acceptance form, so it's not outside of that. But it raises too many questions for me, given that they are a vendor wanting to donate services. I don't have enough information to be comfortable.
I think one of the important things for the $8,000 professional development, we are one of 20 districts in the United States that was identified by Microsoft as it's MAPS is the acronym. Do you remember the words?
No, don't remember.
Minecraft. Using Minecraft for STEM instruction. And the $8,000 Insight to Execution, they are a global partner with Microsoft. They're contracted and trained through Microsoft to do their trainings. And so that's why Insight to Education is here. This is actually a Microsoft program, as well as Microsoft then also provides through I2E, they provide in-classroom support and observation, and then in turn, what they get is a case study and into the implementation of this program for STEM instruction. So like Dr. Harmon was saying, the $8,000 isn't seen in funding, it's seen in instruction. Last year for the DARTs, the $50,000, we did receive $25,000 from Microsoft through this same program, and the money was doubled this year.
So I guess in its format, I would expect to see this as an individual line item, as we see a grant or an award where we can review the terms of that grant or reward, know who's behind it, since Microsoft's not mentioned here at all. And so again, without the information, I'm not comfortable, basically, it's a great offer, but I'm just not comfortable accepting it without knowing more about it.
And so...
So I know the next procedure is, given that the rest of the items I'm fine with, but this item specifically.
So I would suggest that then as we continue our policy and procedure updates, that possibly our gift acceptance and donation policy and procedure might be next on our list, so we can clarify and clean up some of this in terms of the expectations of what's seen by the board and under what circumstances.
Is this included in the contract? So I'm assuming we have a contract with them.
No, that's why it's separate from if it were included in the contract, because if it's included in the contract, then that is typically paid for PD out of the extent of the contract. This is
I'm saying
outside
as
of.
as a non-additional charge. So I'm just thinking about, like, for example, if you entered this contract last year or the
So
year
it's
before.
separate. It's not a contract for a product service. This is actually a gift donation. It is separate from our Microsoft contract. This is not dependent upon that piece
And so
or
how did
negotiated during those terms.
How did it come to the district? As far as, did they just say, hey, we're going to give this to you, or
So
was there
I don't know how it
documentation?
initially. I don't know how it initially showed up with the Minecraft piece, but I can investigate that to get that answer.
So I'll put it out there. I'm interested in approving the donations minus these two items until we get the information we need. So I'll make a motion to approve 5.18 donations, excluding the two insight to education donations of $8,000 and $50,000.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. All right, so we need to make a motion now?
I've got it.
All
Okay.
right.
So I'd like to move that we approve 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, and 5.12.
But can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. That my motion is that we approve 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, and 5.12.
And 5.8.
No, 8 was, it's on a separate motion because we're
gonna
moving
do
it to
that.
something else.
Okay.
There was a request to pull 507 for comments.
Was there 5.07?
We did. That was the who knew it.
Okay, it's coming late, but okay.
So, should we amend the motion to remove 5.07?
Pull before voting.
Well, that's up to you. I don't think that.
So go ahead.
Shannon Jetson Hernandez, Mill Creek Middle School, Kent, Washington. So sorry it is so late. However, when things are presented and known here in this way, it's the only way we can do it. So regarding Who Knew It, I wanted to ask these questions. Are you aware this is a subscription service and not a one-time service? Is it prorated how Allevue was? Do you fully understand what the full cost of this commitment is? Have you asked educators to vet this product? Will educators use it, or will it sit on the shelf as wasteful spending? Is this an affiliate of ERDI or Modern Teacher or an NCDC? Just a simple online review search provides negative comments with an average of 1 to 2.5 stars. How are we just sliding this in? Please pull this off the consent agenda and work as a team to develop new policies for determining how subscriptions are considered and approved at KSD. Specifically, stop allowing no bid contracts, and when we say just 2 bids, that's not really a bid contract, solicited by conflicting relationships. Thank you.
So Debbie's made the motion. Is there a second?
I think I seconded.
You're second?
Didn't I second it?
I don't know. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
Can we hear the motion again?
Yeah. Yes, the motion was to approve 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, and 5.12.
Okay.
I don't think 12 was the one she wants to remember.
All right, is there a
I
second?
seconded it.
All right, thank you. All those, are there any other discussions, questions? Hearing none.
Well, sorry, I'd like to remove 5.07 and vote on that separately. So do I make a motion to amend the motion?
Since there's a motion pending, you vote on
To
up or down.
finish, yeah.
And if you vote it down, you can make a new motion. There's no motion to amend once there's a pending motion.
All right, so I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, and 5.12, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Did we have 3? Did Karen say aye?
No.
No.
Oh. All right, okay.
All those opposed?
All those opposed say no.
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I'll make a
take out
new motion that we approve 5.03, 5.05, and 5.12.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right.
Okay, I'd like to move that we approve 5.07.
All right, is there a second? Guess I'll second. Any other discussions, comments?
There was a question I did not get to ask. At the very end of talking about this, you mentioned that Who Knew It used to be something we used called atomic learning. I want to understand how that was used, how that was, to your recollection, how that was received by the users. And then what do you believe has changed between atomic learning and Who Knew It that it's useful now?
So it was useful before. It wasn't that it wasn't useful before. It wasn't appropriately implemented or put to purpose for appropriate staff. So historically, I think Kent focused on PD based on compliance. It was either aligned with evaluation protocols, possibly CBA, sometimes state or federal requirements, and not thinking about building capacity so that people can continue to remain proficient and become experts in the fields in which they work. And so when the district hit its budget crisis, it was immediately that spring, what we went through is we looked at numbers of use for all tools and immediately cut any contracts for any tools that were not being used appropriately, that were sitting on shelf, those kind of things. And at that time, atomic learning, Who Knew It, was one of those. Not to say that there weren't users who were using it, but it wasn't enough to justify that piece. And so as we move forward, and it was coming out of basic ed. So we were spending basic ed dollars to have a tool sit on its shelf. So when it came time, as we go back through and we had time to thoughtfully evaluate where are our gaps in our learning and how can we provide support for staff that's not always in person, in a building, and can be dispersed in ways where multiple people need access to things. So this is not necessarily a platform to provide content on instruction or other things, but there are particular labor groups that Microsoft training, in terms of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all kinds of pieces are there. We also have the ability to add in our own tools and content. And then when we saw the opportunity to fund that out of title, rather than place that in basic ed as an appropriate piece for how to plan PD for a district, then how are we thoughtful in that and thinking about what that continued support looks like? What is the plan for implementation? And building that in with thought partners and across community. So before, it was a technology purchased out of that 000 budget where all software was purchased. And this go round, it was purposely put and thought through with multiple communities and how it was going to be implemented, who would be those users, and how we can train on not just supervisors to see what's happening there, but actual staff to use the tool and grow.
Absolutely. And with this leadership, certainly as Kathy talked about, we are looking at our equity lens. And when we think about opportunity and access for our employees to have access to high quality professional development, at times outside of their working hours when they choose to do so, particularly some of our other associations have specifically asked for that work. And it was not a strategic approach in the past. It is a strategic approach now. We formulated that, shared that with you in our professional development session that we had during the work session.
Another change is that through our cross-community work, we will now be able to bundle some courses and offer them for clock hours, which we were not able to do in the past. And so that is something we've heard from a variety of our labor partners and our associations, that they would like to see that access available.
I have a question that are very factual, because I have no knowledge about atomic learning. Do we recall when we started using them, and then specify when we stopped using them?
I'm sorry, the last part of that question was.
When you stop, you mentioned that you reviewed a bunch of subscriptions and you canceled some. If you recall when that was in general.
Spring of 2017. So
Okay.
we went through last school year without atomic, with the majority of last.
Can we have some silence, please? I can't hear the speakers. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It was the spring of 2017 when we made that cut. So the 17-18 school year, we went through without Atomic Learning or any digital platform for PD for staff.
Do you know how long we had been using them prior to that?
I don't know off the top, but I can find, that's an easy look, and I can find out for you under Atomic Learning how long we had that contract and get the dollar amount spent then.
And part of this would be included, I mean, obviously, we're going to reevaluate it when it gets to the, we're not locked into year after year. We could cancel if we needed to, but we could also get a report back that said, yes, we used this much of it, and we were able to provide so many clock hours and different things.
Absolutely.
Correct?
And now that it's funded out of Title II, it's subject to Title II funding and the availability of that funding. And also with the requirements, the allowable expenses, we have to look very closely at whether or not it's meeting our needs.
Yeah.
So call for a vote? Or any other?
Is it just the?
It was just
Just
the,
that one.
yeah, the motion was just for this one. Which one it is anymore?
5.12, is it? No.
No, this is 5.07.
7, yes. 5.07. All right. I'd like to call for a vote on 5.07. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes.
Abstain, yes.
Abstain, sorry. Abstain. One abstention.
So I think I have one more motion.
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to move that we have 5.08 go for a fourth reading and 5.12 go for a sixth reading. And again,
You previously passed 5.12.
Yeah.
Oh, did we?
No.
Yes.
I thought that was one of the ones. Oh,
That was included in your motion that you.
okay, sorry. At 5.18, I think is what I meant. I've got too many crossovers here. Hold on, let me double check. No?
So my motion of 5.18
It
approved it
passed.
without the two items.
So by which one was it?
So 5.08.
5.1 would be 5.08, I think.
5.08? Okay, but I thought we pulled the other one on the, okay. I'd like to, sorry, I'm revising.
Formerly 1712.
5.08, that we move that for a fourth reading.
All right, thank you.
I'll second
Is there a
that.
second? All right. Are there any discussions or questions? Hearing none, yes? Karen? No. All right. Hearing none, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. All right, we are done.
With the consent agenda.
Hang on, did we,
Well,
on 6220, did we say we were going to, wanted to tweak some of the words in that? I know we passed it, but,
I'm sorry, there are two questions going on
Oh,
here.
yes,
Okay, I'll come down. What was the question?
were we
Sorry.
satisfied with 6220? Did we, because I know you were, well, this was the one that you were saying.
Well, that was the one
it's
that said
claimed
board and-
District and board and.
And we're going to have a discussion
pass
again.
and we did pass
Did
it, so
pass
now we're
it,
going to do it as a
but-
separate to, that's why I had it pulled here, but you're correct, I did have it on the first motion on
So do
the
we
other
need
one. So I think,
The motion to remove that one?
Unapproved policy.
Unapproved.
This goes to my point. If we're fine with it as is, we can also approve a new change to it later.
Okay.
But we didn't approve it, and then Debbie made a motion just now.
no, if Karen looked at the motion, the
5.08.
first motion, I think, Karen, can you?
Was a motion to 5.12 on
I
that?
think the very, well, I don't know if it was the first or second, was 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, was 5.12 in that one?
5.12, yes, yes, all four were. Yeah, so 5.03, 5.03, 5.05, 5.07, 5.12, that was the first time we went on and approved that. So what was remaining was 5.08.
Okay, but you had wanted to do more on 5.012, so I guess the question.
No,
No, that's the one on 6220.
We did
on
approve
purchasing.
it, but yes, yes, we were going to call it for revision because it said board instead of, so how do we rescind?
Well, so.
Well, the motion, you've approved other items as well. Director Hardy had a good suggestion where it's been approved, you've taken action, you can certainly revisit on a new resolution if you're not satisfied. That's certainly something you can do.
Okay.
Okay, and we don't need to move to do that, or do you?
I would propose that at the next meeting that be an agenda item for you to review.
Okay, Dr. Harmon's shaking her head yes, that she's
thank
got
you.
it on her list. Thank you for keeping us.
All right.
Okay.
So now where are we?
I think we're good.
We're done? Okay. All right, 6.01. I think we need to stop with so many consent agenda items. Maybe move it to their own area. Yes, so 6.01, September 2018 financial statement. We have Ken Smith to speak on 6.01, please.
So I just want to make a quick comment. One of the reasons why I'm here is I've been watching the district for a long time, and it seemed like certain things, I'm not sure people felt like were being heard, so that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking a fair bit. I put a board packet, and I guess I put it on all chairs, including Ms. Howley, so it should be a part of the formal board record, so if anyone would want to come back to these meetings. I'm going to fly through. I had the financial statement, and I put 30 circle buttons on it, or things you could talk about. I'll just do the quick highlights, and then anyone who like they can see me, or it's at the KSD discussion page. The interfund loan is back at $10 million. Was wondering what information was given to Moody's when they did the basically reaffirming the bond rating at lower than what the statewide guarantee is at A1. One of the things I think might be really good for the community and for you is to see the list of the capital projects fund. Most of the capital projects fund balance is restricted. So what is that restricted for, and how do you know that that's being spent for those restrictions? What are the kind of the project plans? In item 13, only 80% of SPED teachers are hired is what it looks like in that report. And then what are the issues if you have 80% of what you budgeted? I believe you're on the 60-day notice for the minimum fund balance policy versus 6002. There's no transfers in September of 2018, so that new policy really hasn't been implemented. It still looks like that was a one-time thing, and I do not think the August financial report it complies with general accepted accounting principles, as I said last time. There is no CP capital projects fund expenditure category for the software, so if you're going to move that, and Executive Director Rarick shared with some of the difference of practices, but I think you still need to get an opinion from certified public accountants. I've given you my opinion, and I don't think what you're doing has been, and this is the final, the August report is not audited. It's not been approved formally by explicit board action, and it's not been substantiated. I asked for the substantiation of that journal entry at the end of the last meeting, and I asked it several times in email. It hasn't been provided. That's, from an accounting perspective, I think you could say that's ridiculous. If it's a closing journal entry, it should be there. It should take 5 minutes, and it hasn't been provided to the public, and I don't understand that, and I think you are harming a whole bunch of things, and as far as I understand, that's a decision of the superintendent, and the superintendent did sign for the F-196 annual financial statement and gave that to OSPI, so you're basically kind of at risk if that financial statement, unless you want to pull it back or seek clarifications from your auditor. I would do that very soon to find out the clarity on that particular item. It's questionable.
All right. Are there any comments or discussions, please, on 6.01? And 6.02, Procedure 3241P, Classroom Management. As a reminder, these are informational items. We are not voting on informational items.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So I did have a comment on it because I was looking through it, and I noticed in specific areas there were there was information about making sure that we provide the information to our families in languages they understand. I did not see that in the initial 3.4, the behavior expectations provided. I did not see there where it was provided to families in multiple languages and languages they understand. So I just saw they would be provided, but that wasn't spelled out in that particular piece. So when we're sending them the expectations, right, the handbook or whatever that looks like, it was not called out that we would make sure that families had it in languages they understand.
So to clarify, you're looking at specifically at 3.4?
4.
This change was addressing specifically 4.4. I can't necessarily speak to the thought behind not calling that out in 3.4. However, I know that good practice and the practice that the district is following generally is to provide those notifications in languages that our constituents and our public, and specifically the parents of students, can understand. But if clarification needs to be made to this procedure in 3.4, and you would like some additional information regarding how those notifications are provided, I can talk to the people who are responsible for providing those notifications and making sure that we're doing that appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Actually, I'd like to go back to 6.01 for a second. One of the things that we did discuss internally and I'd like to see happen is our financial statements. There are questions and there are portions of it that we may or may not understand. So I'd like to see it moved from informational to either presentations or communications from finance under the communications portion of the board meetings from here onwards, just every month. Explanation from finance on the financial statement itself. So I think that would cover some of the questions we have that come up after the board meeting, since we're not approving it. So that said, we are now moving on to our communication from the audience, and first up would be Leslie Hamada, and then followed by Shannon Jeffson Hernandez, please.
Good evening, Leslie Hamada, coming from Washington. Good evening, board. Who we are as a school district is consistently being defined, consistently being tweaked, consistently being updated, consistently being monitored. The mission statement of the Kent School District reads at present: successfully prepare all students for their futures. Pretty broad statement, yet pretty encumbering. We often tend to get what we are by what we are not. We as a society and district are striving for equality and opportunity, and what that says to me is we don't leave kids behind, especially those facing barriers beyond our capability to even imagine. We are inclusive as those being honored tonight. Inclusive to me means all, but especially those who face the biggest challenges and barriers. What we are not is leaving those kids behind or abandoning them or changing the format of their programming so it does not even resemble what we started to achieve. iGrad, if you study the real numbers and the real results, is a program that finally demonstrates meeting the needs of those kids, needing that extra push to make it across the finish line. It is unique in that comparing it to other open-door programs is not fair. Yes, thank you, administration. It appears iGrad will survive in some form. But what troubles me today is in what form. Moving it to KPA with 3 schools in one makes no sense to me. Not giving it the space in the original design creates barriers to success. Changing the flexible hours for kids that need to overcome the normal school time creates more barriers. Reducing staff creates fewer opportunities for kids' needs to be met. Now is the time to define what Kent School District is. We are not a district that does not openly allow input on major school policies and developments. And for you who are interested, that helps pass levies. I've worked on 3. We formulate programs making sure we understand the real financial numbers and the real comparisons of what we are doing and how we are succeeding. We allow input from those doing the actual on-campus work with kids, and their voices are heard. We search and research proven data for methods of operation. What, in my humble opinion, we and our community wants is we are not about changing hours of IGRAD, so kids at work or having a way to get to school cannot succeed. Restore evening hours for IGRAD. What we are not about is not opening up the community discussions regarding sustaining IGRAD as it is. No changes to building site or programming. Have a town hall discussion on the issue. What we are not is not just making every decision about money. We are in a defining period. We are a district who will be, as a community, open to having a town hall. Let's be that great Kent community that I have known we are. I'm fired up and ready to go toward that. Thank you.
Shannon Jepson Hernandez, Mill Creek Middle School. Regarding 5.7, why did you pass this now? Why didn't you wait to get the proper answers? What's the hurry? This is not an equity lens issue as it was suggested. It was also said that historically the product was not used appropriately. The truth is it just wasn't used. So why do we think people would use it now? It was also said we have to look closely as to how far it is meeting our needs. So why would we do that after we commit to spending the money? This is the wasteful spending we speak of. Historically, Kent provided fabulous PD. Since this administration, our PD options have dramatically declined and most of us seek out our own professional development. I personally never used atomic learning, and I would not be surprised if the majority of my peers were aware of it, let alone used it. Poll the teachers and let them speak for what kind of professional development they want. After the motion of 4.01, regarding superintendent travel, Director Van Asselam asked what would the superintendent be doing at the ERDI conference. The question was not directly answered. Director Hardy then asked for specifics regarding how participating in board-related professional development has benefited KSD. Again, the question was not directly and specifically answered. Initially, the superintendent provided an explanation suggesting professional development is basically subjective and relative. However, those who participate in professional development can clearly indicate goals of experience along with methods for measuring effectiveness. After downplaying the definition of professional development, he then proceeded to change focus by sharing his participation in empathy interviews at IGRAD. Kudos for that. However, this redirected the conversation but did not, in fact, answer the question, which was requested direct specifics. What concerns me is this was a missed opportunity to truly manage the conversation, but instead the doublespeak was accepted as an answer and the vote was held. Why? KSD School Board, why are you so quick to accept such responses? Why are you letting the superintendent drive the conversation? This is your board. Why allow yourselves to be manipulated by a simple change in conversation? As a citizen, parent, employee, I implore you to please keep asking questions before you vote. When you ask questions, expect direct, specific examples with evidence. Simultaneously, if you make a motion, please explain why are you pushing for something so the public and your board peers have an opportunity to ask questions from each other in a public forum. The frustration lies with the appearance of critical decisions being made with limited discussion. Your public truly appreciates it when you dig deep and wait for the best decision rather than a swift decision. Thank you for not approving the AASA and ERDI travel. Thank you for hearing our concerns and expecting our superintendent to stay here and work for our students. This is a positive move showing you are listening to us. All I ask is don't let one vague answer be enough. If your questions are not legitimately answered, then please repeat the question until it is. Although the sense of urgency is valued, your investment of wait time is equally valuable. This is the transparency we, the community, crave.
Right, and I believe that those are the only cards we have. So we are up to 7.02, legislative update with Director Hardy, please.
Sure, I'll show my legislative update, which in the past month has really been assessing how various groups are approaching the upcoming session. So to kind of rehash, for our local area, We had many representatives who retained their seat, but we also had several new people get voted in. That happened across the state as well. And so what we've been doing in the meantime is various groups have been solidifying their legislative positions. WASDA, the school, there's some state school board association that's doing it, I forget the acronym, State Association of PTAs, various related to education. But in reaching out to those groups and talking with them and getting research, there's a lot of other legislative change being pushed through, not education related. And so as we think to what we want to change about education at the state level, it could be changes that didn't go far enough from the changes last year in terms of the funding model, or special education or classes, whatever that is, or additional changes we want to see. Talking with the various groups, our best effort may be to align on a legislative priority with another group. WASDA's one, then again, that's school board directors, but a state PTA association or something like that, to at least get an education push going forward. There's a lot of other pushes related to climate change, clean energy, taxes, a variety of things that don't necessarily relate to education, or in the push to reduce state property taxes could impact education in the long run. And while the session hasn't started yet, and we're preparing to, I think our lobby's preparing to go down in February of next year, please reach out to me. I'm working with them to see how to coordinate. I'll be down there at various points in February. So let me know and we can go together, or we can at least meet people together. Because we do have new representatives to meet and talk with, as well as ones to continue to work with. So that's my legislative update for today.
All right, thank you. 7.03, Dr. Watts, Superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you, President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Halley, community, staff, friends. I shared already just less than 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with 5 students at iGrad and with Principal Cleveland to ask what I would call and what is referred to as empathy interview questions. Simply put, the focus was for the students to share with me, straight from their mouths and their experiences, what are the strengths of iGrad, what are the areas for improvement, and if resources were not an issue, what would help each and every one of those students to be even more successful. So even with the first 2 or 3 follow-up questions, Principal Cleveland knew that that took more than an hour, and I agreed to reschedule a second interview, and I look forward to rescheduling that very soon. This report is based on our core values. So what I'll be sharing with you is the first among equals, living our core values in the month of November, December, what has occurred. Equity Council, once again, met again in November to review our current race and equity policy and began laying the foundation for the implementation of the work for this year and years to come. Teaching and learning community kicked off. I was proud to not only kicked off our PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, but most importantly for our teachers who need help. Every new teacher is just that, a new teacher. In fact, every new staff member is just that, a new staff member, and they need additional support. We've talked about professional development. New Teachers Boot Camp provides that support for our teachers. Hundreds of our young men and women of color and adults who supported them, including Kent School District students. I was proud to attend as well the 9th Annual Black and Brown Male Summit at Highline College to increase leadership skills, self-awareness, and academic empowerment. This fall, in addition, Kent School District participated for the first time in the Native American Youth Leadership Academy. This program is going into its 4th year and takes place every other month at the Puyallup Tribe's Little Wild Wolves Youth and Family Center in Tacoma. The program is organized by Western Washington Native American Education Consortium, a team of Native American education coordinators and leaders from across Western Washington school districts who are committed to our Native student group's academic success, leadership, and excellence. December 12th, on the morning of Tuesday, December 12th, Kent School District hosted in this boardroom the College Access Partner Breakfast. The purpose of the event was to connect our school leaders and and President Vengadaslam was also in attendance. Some of you know, and your colleagues were there as well, from school-based leaders, counselors, career specialists, district administrators, partnering with our community-based organizations. These intentional partnerships, everyone, if you're not aware, they play a critical role in supporting each and every one of our students. For the purpose of achieving post-secondary goals, we had an exercise to learn more about how simple and yet not easy it is to gain access to financial aid, to help our students toward college access and completion. And a special thank you to our staff who supported that work, as well as our partnership with PSESD. Excellence. Hundreds of Kent School District students and families attended the Beyond High School event at Kentwood. We held our first stay interviews, and that's, again, a part of the work that's coming out of our human resources community, and we appreciate that very fact. Why do our staff stay? And once we know why, we can reproduce the conditions that increase retention. We've celebrated our Guest Teacher Appreciation Month. I can't say that enough, and look forward to joining that opportunity as well. We speak of college, career, success. We think of military appointments. CTE, career in tech ed. Two of our CTE career specialists, Amy Hobson, Kent Lake, and Basha Alexander at Kent Meridian, attended the Pave the Way conference at the University of Washington recently. The breakout sessions were helpful and informative and allow them to more effectively support our students towards graduation. And we know that our graduation rates, while they were historic, and they proved that we can do the work in spite of and because of some of the operational challenges. We still have 16% of our student groups who have not met requirements, and that means we have work to do. From a community standpoint, I would like to say that our Student Family Support Services held Kent School District's first Community Truancy Board for the 2018-19 school year. We thank our community partners from Kent Youth and Family Services, Valley Cities, King County, and the Department of Social and Health Services. That's truly a consortium approach. Special recognition to Denise Moreno for her clear communication and organization for this meeting. United Way, we know giving is a part of our work. We are educators, and we give of our time, we give of our talent, we give of our treasure. And I would like to conclude by saying that Kent School District raised a little more than $20,000 through this year's United Way Workplace Giving campaign to support families in need throughout the King County area. With that, winter vacation is upon us, and I would offer this reminder that we stay warm. If you have clothes and warm clothing, to donate to clothing bank for families who are in greater need. Also know that our schools, for those who need a reminder, no school during December 19th through January 1st, as we bring 2018 to what I would call a joyful and memorable close. I wish each and every member of Team KSD a safe, a restful, joyful holiday with your loved ones, with members of your family, with your friends. 2019 will be here waiting for us when we return. Let's make sure that we continue working together to make 2019 the best year ever for Kent School District staff and families. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. All right. Would you like to go this way, Denise?
Yeah, let's start. Gosh, I've been busy. So I want to first thank everyone for being here. Again, it's much appreciated. And I know the hour is late, so I won't be too long, but I just want you to know that you are appreciated, and I enjoy seeing every one of you. And I appreciate the work that you do and the support that you give us and our students. Really quickly, I've had the opportunity to do several things. So I had the opportunity to go to the community Thanksgiving meal, which was fantastic. I believe that was the 16th of November. So many people, it was just amazing at KPA, and all those people got fed, and it was wonderful. It was a great opportunity to see everybody out. I also have the benefit, and I do think it's a benefit, of wearing two hats. So, of course, you guys know professionally, I work for the Auburn School District. And at times, I'm able to take part in professional development that I use here as well, right? So I kind of bring what I learned from there the opportunity to use it here. And so I did attend the Becoming an Anti-Racist Educator training with my staff. So I did take my family engagement liaison staff. Those were available to that training. And it was fantastic. And so it was done through the PSESD. And it was a really great opportunity. There was one teacher there from Kent. And when she introduced herself, the facilitator kind of mentioned that 4 people had wanted to go, but there was a lack of substitutes, and so they were not able to attend. So that was a wonderful opportunity to do some learning again, to enhance the equity work that we do, that I do there in Auburn and here as well in Kent. So that's a double benefit that I get to enjoy. I also attended the Schools of Distinction Recognition with Millennium. Was it last week? I can't keep up. And it was fantastic. It's always wonderful to see our teachers and principals so proud, and they all had the great sweatshirts on, and it was just a really great event. And also I got to attend, I went to the Madrigal Feast. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. Kentwood Choir puts on their one fundraising, well, second fundraising, but their biggest fundraiser of the year, which is Madrigal Feast, which is a 2-day interactive show dinner kind of event. And okay, this is going to sound bad. My son did it for 4 years, and so I kind of thought I got away with it until my daughter decided to join choir. So I'm in it for 4 more years to volunteer. It's a great show, and I would love to go, but I ended up spending all 3 days instead of just one attending the show and supporting, so as a parent. But anyway, it was wonderful as usual, and great opportunity. So I wish you all a wonderful holiday season. I hope that you are able to spend time with your loved ones and relax and enjoy. And just again, we appreciate the work that you do and that you've done over the year, and I really look forward to moving forward to next year with you all. So thank you.
Yeah. I know as a retired teacher this time of year, you're just counting the days till the vacation. It's really well earned, and I'm just happy that everybody can have a break and hopefully relax and enjoy the holidays and be with family and friends and sleep in or whatever it is you do that feels good. I've attended 2 drama performances. First one at Kent Meridian. The production was Lovesick, and Jay Thornton did just a fabulous job with those kids. The kids were wonderful. They knew their parts, they knew their characters, they stayed in character. It flowed really well, and I was just really impressed. Then about 5 days later, I went to Kent Ridge to see the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which I saw a couple years ago at one of the other schools, but it was just fun again to watch it. And again, Director Jenny, Ms. G, and Catherine Robinson, who's the musical director, did a fabulous job with the kids. They were beautifully trained, and they performed beautifully. Great singing, great characters. It was just a lot of fun. And again, I hope that people have a chance to go to other performances, because it's really fun to see our kids. And having been in productions as a student, it's really fun and it's memorable. It's something you keep the rest of your life. Yesterday, I went to Meridian Middle School, and I went to the first 3 periods at Meridian Middle School. Principal Doris Johnson welcomed me and led me to the first place and kind of stayed with me a couple times, and then she left me in the classes and she came back to get me. But the first period split between band, Holly Pope and Ainsley Levitt Holes, and they were preparing for a concert tomorrow and Friday. And I just was really impressed with, having been in band and orchestra many years ago, the difference that they got feedback from the students. Where do we need to practice more? Let's rate the songs and let's look, okay, this song got the most C votes, so this is the song we need to practice the most. So it really took feedback from the students, and I thought that was great. So I hope they do well in their concert. And then I was in Christine Murphy's 7th grade math class. They're working on scale factor, and they were building gingerbread houses and decorating yesterday. They were having a lot of fun, but they were designing dream houses, and they were doing floor plans on grid paper, and so working with scale factor. And that's what they're doing the rest of this week and maybe part of next week, I think. And then I went to 3rd period Evander Corley's 8th grade IP math class, and that was really interesting. One boy came up to me at the very beginning, and Mr. Corley said that I was a school board member, and he got this boy got a look in his eye, and he said, well, do you know what school board member is? Yeah, I had to meet with one when I was almost expelled. And I went, oh, but not in this district. But so I just kind of watched him, and he'd been absent the day before, and he was trying to catch up, and he really was working hard, trying hard to get caught up, and we had to move him to be with somebody who was working at the same place in the assignment. And they just worked together really well. And afterwards he came up and he said, what do you think of me? How'd I do? And so I just went through all the things that I'd seen him do that I thought were really positive, and he ended up with a big smile on his face, and I thought, okay, that worked. So I really enjoyed being at Meridian, and they said, welcome to come back, so I probably will. Thanks.
I want to start with something that I only looked at today, and I was looking through my notes, and I didn't find it, but I recall at least 2 students who came before the board and spoke about something that was important to them, which was how early a middle school and high school class starts in the day, the first time you have to be there. And what I want to point to is a wonderful NPR article that came out today on what Seattle schools did to change their start time later, both resulting in kids getting more sleep, but then also performing better in class. So I encourage you to go out and find that yourself and read that. And then I wanted to express, this is very, very ad hoc, I wanted to express kind of a dual feeling I have right now of comfort and concern. I've talked about concerns I've have of lack of information, but I do want to provide my statement of comfort regarding the information that I have received from Ben Rarick and his team regarding call it the Capital Projects Fund transfer, that in my comfort level, it has been substantiated, validated, and provide enough information to me that it is not fraudulent in any way. The concern remains that it was 24 hours ago that I actually reached this level of information, almost a full month after we initially started asking for it. And I understand that almost no one else may feel comfortable about it and still have those concerns and don't understand. And so I'll offer that as anyone reached out to me earlier this year, February, March, April, regarding questions about the budget, reach out to me again. I'll share with you as much as I understand, and hopefully get you to reach the comfort level that I'm at. And if not, we'll just figure out what we need to know and go forward. And I also wanted to echo what I talked about last year. There's less than a week left before winter break, but for many families, they don't get winter break. They still have to work, and their kids can't go to school. And so there's significant need for various services. Be a friend, babysit somebody's kids, take them with them to dinner, or take them with you to dinner, or something like that. People definitely don't have off usually the rest of last week, and then maybe have to work later in Christmas week as well. And so we have a significant amount of time that my kids' friends won't have a place to go during the day, or their mom will have to stay home, or they'll have to be on their own, whatever that is. And so reach out to people you know and see how you can help. So that's my report for the evening.
So I had the opportunity this week to go to the PTA and President Luncheon, the KAC PTA President Luncheon, which is always a great event to be able to connect with people there. And the keynote speaker that they had this year was from an organization called GEM, which partners up with our district in many different ways. And for the life of me, his name is escaping me. Thank you. Thank you. He shared his story first he talked about the organization, and someone asked about his personal story, and he shared his story with the group there about his journey and how people had helped him, which I really think cements the thing that we've talked about many times about those personal connections and how important it is as we're looking at our students to remember that all students have the potential to be successful. And as we are looking at professional training or different things that way, of helping everybody be able to really feel comfortable with that and to be able to help our students go forward. So it was a great event to go and to see that. I would, Director Hardy, like to partner with you. The Day on the Hill is February 10th through the 11th. So Dr. Watts, if we could maybe start working with Leadership Council to start, so we could, perfect, so that we could participate in that Day on the Hill. It's a great opportunity. I've gone a few years with our students to be able to go, and the legislators are always very, very excited to see them and to hear what their experiences are. And so I look forward to the opportunity to do that. And then also, Director Hardy, you might not know, in the past, we've also invited some of our new legislators to come here and have like breakfast with us, with the board and other staff members. So if you'd like help maybe coordinating that, that might be something to help also with that education one. We do have upcoming conversations with the board in January, so look for information about that coming out. And then I would also like to share with the board, because I haven't had an opportunity to yet, as part of our task force, I had the opportunity to talk to John Welch, who is the PSESD superintendent. And in part of our conversation, he had asked specifically about how things were going financially, and we talked a little bit about the 3.2. He did look into that and did call me back and said that in his opinion, as well as with the opinion of the other financial people on his staff, that there was no violations of RCWs or WACs, and that the transaction followed the OSPI guideline. I apologize, I'm very tired at the moment. But so, and I would also like to echo that my level of comfort with the transfer and the work that our financial group has done. I appreciate their work and what they have done on that. And so then just in closing, I do hope that everyone takes time over the holiday break for a couple of things. One, for that rejuvenation, and also as we reflect on our why. Why do we do things? And how can we reach out to others that may not have what we have? So as we look at people that have either influenced our lives or think about people that we have the opportunity to make a positive impact on, because we live in a world where there's a lot of not always positive things that are happening. And I hope that as we take this opportunity through the break that we have, that we can reflect on how we can be that person that's helping do positive changes around us. So I wish you all a wonderful break. So thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, I'll make mine quick. I was on travel on personal leave, so just had a few opportunities. I enjoyed being also at the School of Distinction Awards and celebrating Millennium. Being a Trailblazer mom, I was really proud of our school. And I also was part of the financial aid planning for the post-secondary for our students. So I thank all the staff members who coordinated that. It was really a great display of collaborative effort by our community-based organizations and staff members as well. And then I wanted to mention specifically our community conversations are going to be on January 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. at KM Library, January 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Kentridge Library, January 26th, 10 to 12 p.m. at the Kent Public Library. That's our January dates, and we also have on February 28th two meetings, as well as on March 2nd. So we have a number of community conversations coming up. So if you have questions that you'd like to hear about or discuss with us, please, send us it in advance, and we'll be happy to prepare or do this, impromptu, however way you like. There's nothing that we are trying to hide, and I know information has not come out in a timely manner that you'd wish to see. So we have taken pains to have meetings with Dr. Watts, staff members, and today in particular, I think it was very revealing, all the work that has gone into this. The issue, we've talked quite a bit as a board, and one of the things that I also want to say is that we did confirm that, I wanted to confirm that the board does believe that there was no misconduct on the part of Dr. Watts on this 3.2 transfer. We've met to discuss this matter, and we wanted to understand how we got to this number. The information was being gathered over a course of 4 or 5 months, and what we wish is that we had known month to month, how those changes were going to impact our financial statements. And what we really feel is that there are areas of growth for Dr. Watts and for staff, and we have to communicate our expectations to the point where we are getting information in a timely manner. And I think part of it is our responsibility, and part of it is a staff responsibility. And I think as a team, we feel like we can get there. And so we are going to be providing some expectations for the growth to move us forward. But I, as well as my colleagues have mentioned, I feel very comfortable in what was presented to us by Mr. Rarick and his team. And I thank them for all the work that they've done. They've taken a beating, from the public on the information, and not deserving. I'm sorry. But this is a tough thing to do, and there wasn't any misconduct here. And I say that, and I ask a lot of questions, and I feel very comfortable with the answers I've received. So I want to end on that, and I also, as my colleagues have said, wish you a very joyous holiday season. Thank you so much for attending. Have a good night. We are adjourned.